Hello everyone and welcome to this latest episode of Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark. And it's kind of an extra large version. I've zoomed the camera in a bit, so let me know if it's too off-putting for you to have me so close to you. I guess you'll be able to view all my physical imperfections, of which there are not any, maybe, apart from few wrinkles. No, I'm only joking, of course. So I hope you're all doing very well, and I'm coming to you today with a video about science fiction. I'm sure many of you were rather surprised to see my announcement video for New Worlds November. I'm not exactly somebody you would associate with science fiction, and where the rest of my wonderful co-hosts, by the way, the event is hosted primarily by the Bookish Bryants, and I have a plethora of wonderful co-hosts, all of whom will be linked down below. Many of them will be making videos on why they like and why they read science fiction. I, on the other hand, am a little bit of a misnomer in that group because I don't read science fiction. It's not that I've never read science fiction, I'm just not an avid science fiction reader. I've dabbled in it. I've had the odd passing acquaintance with it, but I have not really read a lot, and certainly nothing approaching the amount that my fellow hosts and co-hosts read. So instead of being able to make a video like that, I thought I'd make a video just basically about science fiction and me, and maybe perhaps looking at why I don't read science fiction so much. It will probably be a little bit of a rambling video because I don't really know the answer to that question. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to kind of explore in conversation with you and with myself as to what that reason, or what reasons may lay behind my lack of science fiction reading. Now, on the surface, I think science fiction should really appeal to me. You know, I'm a big fan of adventure novels, Victorian adventure novels particularly, and I'm sure there is, tons and tons of adventure within science fiction. After all, a lot of it is kind of this bold exploration of what ifs and possible future imaginings. I do find science fiction interesting, perhaps more than some other forms of genre fiction, because there's always an element of it could be possible, I suppose, with some of the things discussed and talked about within science fiction. I've always had a problem with fiction. Well, maybe not always, but certainly throughout my late teens and early 20s, I was primarily a non-fiction reader. Any fiction I read would have likely have been due to some kind of schoolwork or coursework, something like that. And I think what happened somewhere along the way is I lost my ability to suspend disbelief. And so I think when you read a large amount of genre fiction, be it horror or fantasy or science fiction, you are required to suspend your disbelief to varying degrees. As I said, probably a little less so with science fiction maybe than fantasy, perhaps, because a lot of what takes place in fantasy would be an impossibility. It's a completely fantastical scenario. It will feature things that just plainly do not exist. Whereas with science fiction, of course, some things may not exist yet, but they are theoretically possible, and they could perhaps exist one day in the future. Now, my passing experience or flirtation with science fiction has come really through reading works of people such as H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, which slot in nicely to my own go-to style of work, which is, again, this kind of the Victorian novel and that kind of thing. I have read For example, the first book in Isaac Asimov's, sorry, it's Isaac Asimov, isn't it? I suppose in English, Foundation series, and I enjoyed it. But it was interesting because we were talking about science fiction, and Scott from the Bookish Brands asked me how I felt reading it. Did I notice, obviously a big difference going from, the type of things I normally read to reading that? And of course, stylistically, yes. There is an element of simplicity in terms of the style, generally, in terms of simplicity, the style of language or type of language used in writing more genre fiction, I think. Certainly more modern forms of it, but that's natural. I mean, you're not going to write a book in 1970 the same way as you would have written it in 1870. And I think that at first, I have to adjust myself. I mean, it hits me when I read it. I mean, when you read Foundation, it is simply written. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, of course. It just jars you, I suppose, when you're so used to getting, into the older style of writing. I mean, it's the same thing, I'm sure, and it happens to me as well. If I do read other things and then I go back to, a book by Henry Rider Haggard, for example, it takes me a good few pages to get back into the flow of the style. So stylistically, of course, they are very different, but I think that's not necessarily surprising. And I'm not sure that really is a reason as to why I have not read as much science fiction as I probably should have. And I can't really say it's not due to lack of interest in science or space and that kind of thing, because I've always had a big fascination with both those things. But I haven't when it comes to reading fiction. And I don't know why that is. I really don't. Strangely as well, if I was to look at the things I used to watch on television growing up, there was quite a big chunk of science fiction. I used to watch the original Star Trek series as a kid, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed films such as Flight of the Navigator, Black Hole, War Games, that kind of thing, all of which are science fiction. I adore time travel, books and stories to do with time travel, so that is not necessarily an aspect of science fiction that I've avoided. So that means that it snuck under the radar a little bit, and I have read perhaps more than I realized when I look at all the kind of subgenres of science fiction. Another thing I enjoy, but haven't read anything like as much as I would like to, is the alternate history subgenre of science fiction. I don't really like dystopian stories, but then I haven't really read many, so I might like them if I read a good enough one. Aliens, things like that, I don't know. I think it's very difficult. Robots. Yeah, I'm not sure. Because on the surface it should be interesting to me, but it hasn't grabbed me. It hasn't pulled me in and made me think, yeah, this is awesome. Not yet, and I'm hoping that the opportunity of being a co-host for such a wonderful event as New World's November might ignite something akin to wanting to explore more and discover more about this genre that is beloved by so many. I am quite jealous of the knowledge of everybody within that group. I'm jealous of the enthusiasm which they show for this. And I'm jealous of the way it brings them together, because that shared love of this genre and whatever, it's fascinating to see. The fact that these people, the group is geographically, diverse, and yet, you can see it's a whole group of new friends, very welcoming and very kind people to bring me in as an outsider in terms of knowledge when it comes to this genre. But I don't have the same really when it comes to what I read. I mean, there are a couple. I mean, the lovely thing is, people do have a wide range of reading tastes within BookTube, but what I particularly enjoy tends to be a minor part of most of everybody else's, at least who I know and have regular contact with, reading tastes. But it's still enough to get in there, But I haven't got this, it's fascinating watching them. They're experts. They really are. And I'm sure they don't mind me telling you that, right? They can, certain members can just recall, obscure works from anthologies written in the 1920s or 30s. I'm sure if you watch the co-hosts' channels, you'll probably be able to know, especially to whom I'm referring there when I'm talking about that. But obviously I can't do that. I'm struggling in terms of pulling together a TBR because it's a minefield. It's one of two problems. Either I'm being bombarded, of course, with well-meaning suggestions of things to read, or if I try to go it alone, it's impossible to navigate my way through the sheer abundance of material available in science fiction. And we have all these various sub-themes, for example, alien archaeology or genre crossing and this kind of thing. But I wouldn't know. I don't know what's what, right? So it's going to be an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward very much to having you along for the journey. So I apologize that the video has been somewhat rambling and that I was unable to tell you the reason why I like science fiction or why I read science fiction, or even really why I don't read science fiction. But perhaps you get some idea and you might understand a little bit of what I'm trying to convey, because I don't think it's something that's particularly easy to put into words and articulate to you the reason why not. Because as I say, it seems to me a very inoffensive genre. There should be stuff for everybody within science fiction. I'm kind of believing that there will be, and I look forward to discovering and finding perhaps my own niche within this extremely popular genre. So there we go. And please do leave comments below about why you do or why you don't read science fiction, why it may be of little interest to you or why it's of huge interest to you. What brought you to it? What introduced you to science fiction? And if you don't read any, would you be willing to give it a shot perhaps during the month of November? Do let me know. So everybody, sorry for the kind of perhaps shaky quality of the video. I'm trying out a different camera, and I hope the sound, it feels like there's a small delay between the picture and my microphone. Hopefully it doesn't put you off too much. So do take care, everyone, and I shall see you all again very soon indeed. Bye for now.